Welcome to AWS Cloud for Startups, Rapid Repeatable DevOps Rollouts. This is a virtual workshop sponsored by ScalePoint. My name is Alex Taylor, and I'm the Manager of Programs and Digital Experience at NC Tech. NC Tech is the unifying voice of the tech sector for North Carolina. If you would like to learn more about NC Tech, including learning more about upcoming virtual workshops, please visit nctech.org. Now for some housekeeping items. This session will last about 40 to 45 minutes with time at the end for questions. If you have any questions during the session, please put them in the Q&A box down below. The session is also being recorded with a recording of this virtual workshop being sent to all registrants after the session concludes. ScalePoint has created a survey that will be sent to all registrants after the session ends today, and then with some of the respondents being selected as a winner of a giveaway for AWS and CISO security services. So for 1 month. And that's provided by ScalePoint. So please be on the lookout for that survey link and the video link and that follow-up message that will be coming to y'all after this. And so now I want to introduce Steve Henry and David Duong with ScalePoint Solutions, who will be leading this session today.
Hi, folks. Great to meet you all. So just to dive in really quickly, you can kind of see from the left, our main goal for today is from the AWS side to take you through a little bit of the journey that we find the startups that we work with go through. So we'll start kind of at the, we'll do a quick introduction to ourselves, a little bit of housekeeping pieces as well too, talk about the giveaway. But really the intent of this one will take you through when we first meet a startup, where are they at? What are they thinking? What are their challenges? What happens when we start working together? What are the things that get rolled out on the AWS side? How do we keep working together after that, after the rollout's done? Then we've got, David's going to take us through a couple stories that we have from some more exciting things that have happened before in the past. Some of like some big like rollout stories that were kind of fun. And then just a little bit of we'll ask David 1 or 2 questions about himself as well. And then at the end, we'll open it up as an open forum for questions for everyone. And again, like the main goal of this really is just to be able to take a view, okay, hey, we're a startup, we're on AWS. What does that look like to get it right? What are the challenges people see? How do we do this in a more repeatable way? So really from the goal side, that's the journey, right? From start to like, how do we actually really do this right? So it's never a problem for us. 2, we want to give you guys a bit of a view of, I call the good, bad, and the ugly. Like, what does it look like when it's good? What does it look like when it's bad? So not everyone's going to be technical all the time, but how do you know the difference between the two? Like, how do you kind of get indication if we're doing a good job or not? And then we want to give you some credibility and confidence, right? So that when you stand your platform up, you know it can scale. You'll be able to talk to your customers. If you get a big enterprise deal, they're like, yeah, this is going to be good. We're solid with this. We're not worried about it. We're going to have a big influx of traffic. That's fine. We're going to be good for it. We want you to be able to have that. And we're going to talk about some of the things along the way that when you're set up like this, that will never be an issue. So quickly just diving in. So yeah, as Alex mentioned, one of the things that we will do is, so our main focus, just as quick background is we do AWS DevOps and we do, we act as a CISO, we roll out security programs for startups. So after this, we'll send you a quick survey. I believe Alex is going to put in the chat right now. And, if you're selected for this, if you're interested in it, then we'll do like a 1 free month with you to give you, our main goal for this is we want to give you something tangible. So you're set up, you know what you can do going forward, you know what the next steps are. And then you have some options to work with us, or you can take it yourself from there. We did have this last month as well too for our security one. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to Future Farm Agritech. So that was our winners there, and we were able to have get out with them last week as well too, and we're just kicking off with them right now. So excited to see who's going to be selected for this month. Okay, so let's dive into the fun parts. First, I'll throw it to David here to give you a quick introduction to himself.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. My name is David DeWong. I'm a DevOps engineer at ScalePoint Solutions. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. Fun fact about me, I have 3 kids and I'm into woodworking.
Nice. And actually, I love the deck that you've been rolling out over the last year as well too in the backyard there. That's been pretty solid.
Thanks.
Yeah, and super quick background on myself. So I was an engineer back in the day. I worked as a CTO for a couple of firms. We've been through some M&As as well too. So, some of the bigger challenges of integrating those, building some real large systems at scale, and not just setting them up, but kind of being on that side of, okay, let's see what happens when you need to run this for 10 years and you've got, billions of hits coming through a month. So it's been kind of fun playing on both sides, both from startup and really being at the scale stage. Okay, so I'm going to set the stage really quickly for this, and then for the rest of the slides, really, David's going to tell you about get a little bit more specific on the AWS side for this. So when we first meet people from the startup sector, there's typically 3 stages that I would put them in that we find are fairly similar. So just that, see if any of these resonate with you. Most of the time at pre-seed or seed stage, they've got some MVP going. They've hacked some stuff together really quick, right? You don't have a lot of funding. You don't have a lot of people. Very often you don't even have a DevOps person at this point. So that's a stage where we'll often come in. They're like, okay, now that we've got stuff together, we're getting a little bit of funding in. We need to put up something that we can actually, we can't run a house of cards here. We need to build some stuff that's going to scale. We need our first dedicated DevOps. They're hard and expensive to find. Rather than do that, that's where we can come in and we take that right from the beginning. As you get around Series A, what we tend to find is, okay, things are a little bit further along here. It's not just launching a workable platform. It's like, okay, now we're going to need to start scaling. We're getting some bigger customers on board. A lot of times, they can see, look, it works right now, but in 6-12 months, I'm not sure about that. Or if we close the next round, I'm not sure it's going to. And it's been really hard for them both to find senior DevOps people, as well as, it takes a long time in the market just to find them in general. And then the third one that we run into, I'd say typically around Series B and later, is, okay, they've been running, they've got stuff going, they might even have a DevOps team in place. They've got some critical decisions they need to make, and they can't be wrong at this point, right? Because at this point, your metrics really matter for the company. You've got to scale quickly. So, we might be breaking into microservices. We might have big data lakes that we're doing. We might have some, we could be critical infrastructure for customers. So at this point, there's some critical decisions that when they make a decision, it has to be right. And then some of these are a little trickier to roll out because you're not starting from scratch. You've already got a live system going. So that's kind of our 3 stages we find: launch, scale, critical decisions. So at this point, okay, so now we figured out your problems, where you're at. I'll throw it to David a little bit to tell it, what's it like? So when you're working with your customers here, what's it like working together?
Yeah, so at this point, we come in and then we get familiar with the client's workflow. So if they're using Jira or Slack, we integrate ourselves into those solutions so everything feels seamless. And at that point, we'll work through the sprints in Jira, for example, communicate through Slack or other communication tools. And from there, we provide support or any troubleshooting issues that arise.
One of the questions we'll get a lot, David, will be, so they've got a dev team. You guys are looking at DevOps. How do you draw the line between ownership between what the dev team looks after and what you guys look after on the DevOps side?
Yeah, for the DevOps side, we mainly look at the our ownership is the app the infrastructure side of things, and the CI/CD pipeline. So, for example, for the AWS infrastructure, we'll handle everything there, and we'll include the CI/CD pipeline when deploying new infrastructure that comes out. But we'll also help you with troubleshooting applications, but we're not physically there to develop your applications. We're just there to maintain the foundation, and
So basically, you guys look after the infrastructure, they look after the application.
Correct. Yes.
And then if the infrastructure breaks, that's you guys. If the code breaks,
yeah, infrastructure breaks, we'll come in through Slack. We'll communicate what we're doing. Give feedback, provide updates essentially, and then fix any issues that come up for the infrastructure.
Okay, so this will be a little bit of the meat of it here. I think the big theme of this one is when you're rolling out AWS Cloud, you guys have a bit of a plan for like, this is what a good infrastructure looks like, right? If you're building SaaS on cloud, like your code's different, but the infrastructure is not as much. So there's kind of 5 parts we like to talk about, and we'll let David talk about each of these, but just quickly at a high level. One is assessing and planning, right? So take a look before you go in, come up with a plan, see what that looks like. Set up the environments and the infrastructure. David will talk to you about infrastructure as code. So this is a different way that you can actually build things out. Then you've got your CI/CD pipeline. So this is actually how you build and deploy your code. And then we'll talk a little bit about security and how we provide updates as well. So David, when so you've just kicked off at this point, right? You've got a new client, you're just stepping in with them. How do you guys start off? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so we'll look at an example where let's say we have a client that has an infrastructure that is only sitting on one AZ zone and doesn't have high availability. So what we do is we'll just come in and we already have a template of the infrastructure that already includes security, high availability, and the important part is the infrastructure as code, which you can take that, and if you want to go to another continent or another region, we can just quickly build it from there, right?
Nice. And as you're planning this out, so talk a little bit about, do you guys get into architecture diagrams, documentation? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, the biggest thing is technical debt. We're there to help eliminate that. So what I mean by that is we'll provide the technical architecture diagram and we'll provide the support. So when new engineers come in, we're there to help those engineers, bring them up to speed, get them to get familiar with the architecture, and we're just there to help support them.
Nice. Cool. And then actually, one of the other ones that's interesting sometimes is you can imagine, I imagine, some of the clients you start at, they're going to be at different stages of how much they already have built there. So, when you talked about tech debt and improvements there, as you're rolling out a new setup for the environment, are there some things that you typically find that, you'd want to upgrade or you'd want to get to the right point, or what does that look like as you're doing those changes?
Yeah. So when we're assessing the infrastructure, we look at all the things that could compromise security. So for example, if there's IAM roles that have admin, like we got to figure out why that's there, and then note everything down and provide it to the client. If there's new upgrades that come in, we terraform that, or we put it as infrastructure as code, and then we'll also put that in place as well.
And one last one too, when you're looking at, sometimes we'll see things where there's applications that are just deployed, like running alone on an EC2. How do you tell us a little bit about like ECS and EKS, like Kubernetes, like how you would typically use those and containerizing?
Yeah, good question. So for EC2, if we have an application that's just sitting on an EC2 instance, there's a couple of things that the disadvantages though between that and ECS or EKS is one that you have a single server. If that goes down, your application goes down as well, and there's no high availability, and you have to manually upkeep the patch. You have to add. There's no self-healing for that application. So that's the reason why we deploy ECS or in containers, is because one, the fast it can heal itself by, if one container goes down, it'll automatically bring up another container. If one instance goes down within that cluster, it'll bring up that instance, and then you can automate the patching for that as well. And for the next slide, you'll see that there is a diagram of between the two. So if Steve can go to the next one. So at this, you'll see before on the left side, you'll notice that typically this is what we see in clients where It's just one single availability zone in one region, and you'll have one or two EC2 instances in the public subnet, not secure in the private subnet, and a single database that is not like self-managed, right? So one, there's a lot of overhead. You'll essentially have to get like a database engineer or even one sysop, a couple of sysops to manage these instances. And if one fails, then you'll have on call and all that stuff. For scale point, we're there to help eliminate that. And you'll notice on the right side, what we typically do is we'll deploy in three regions, or sorry, three basically infrastructure,
Accounts.
one for dev, QA, prod. The purpose of those is for dev is more like a sandbox and test new features and so forth. Once all those have been approved and migrated, we can put it into QA, which is like a replicate version of prod to test, make sure everything's there, make sure everything's okay. Once everything's good, then we'll migrate that over up to prod. The infrastructure, what it looks like is you'll have you're deployed in two availability zones. What that will give you is high availability. So if one availability zone goes down, you'll have the second one up, still running. So clients or users won't be impacted through your application. Each of those availability zones, everything mostly is in a private subnet, so nothing from the outside can get access to those servers within those private subnets. The only difference is that in public subnet, we'll have a bastion host, which you can SSH into that host, and then you can get access to the private subnet servers from there. And you'll notice that they are ECS managed with containers, and it has the benefits of that is self-healing and what is that one?
Like an auto scale, right?
Auto scale, essentially self-healing. And if you're upgrading, for example, your application needs an update, it'll push up to ECS, and all the containers will come down and then slowly replace itself, and there won't be any downtime. You'll notice on the RDS managed database, it's managed by AWS, so you don't need to worry about the server being up. AWS has a great track record of everything being up in terms of the services. So, and it's high availability. That's also being self-managed by AWS. And you'll notice that there are key services in the middle between the two of the availability zones. So you have AWS Secrets Managers, which holds the passwords, any secrets that you need, and it's encrypted. Key management services, the one above that is essentially like a key that AWS uses to manage to encrypt your data. And it's certificate manager and IAM for roles and permissions.
Yeah, I'd say the two biggest takeaways that we find from this, if we simplify the detail, would be is building infrastructure that doesn't fall over, right? If you need, and there's a lot of little nuances to that David covered in there that, that's a longer chat for that. But this, something falls over, it spins back up again. If you need to patch a database, it fails over to the other one, it moves back up, or regions down, it goes to the other. And same for the environments as well, too. Having proper separated environments will be really important from the security side, as well as just from being able to test, deploy, make sure that pipeline runs really smooth, right? Try and make sure you actually hit your roadmap deployments, and infrastructure is never slowing you down.
And one big benefit is, sorry, Steve, if you could go back to that slide. The big benefit is that you'll notice that there's a big, it might look complex to you, but it's not. Once you put everything in infrastructure code, which is the next slide that Steve is going to show, is that everything is in code. So if you want to take this whole thing and put it into, let's say, Canada region, then you can essentially replace some variables within the Terraform template, and then there you go. It'll deploy everything without going into the AWS console and just manually bringing these services up. So yeah.
So speaking of that, yeah, like tell us about infrastructure as code. What is it? Why do you use it?
Infrastructure as code is super important because it cements your infrastructure as this is like the source of truth of your infrastructure, and it allows you to replicate, like what I mentioned before, it allows you to replicate whatever you have into a different region or into multiple regions. So everything's code, you just deploy and you're done, right? And you'll notice on the left side, those are different services of AWS that we've create modules for. And as new clients, as we interact with new clients and they ask for new services, we create a module for that, and we can use it for any future clients as well. So.
Yeah, the big thing that's most important for this, and I know this is one of David's favorite parts here, is if what you're solving for is you're guaranteeing consistency across your environments. So if everyone's going in and they're just deploying stuff, poking things around, you could have a lot of times we'll find services that are just running for no reason. We don't know why they're there, so you're driving up cost. The other part is, oh, this worked in dev, but it doesn't work in QA, or it works differently in prod. And you're trying to figure out why that is. So it causes a whole bunch of problems. And these are a lot of little things that when you're looking at why is my roadmap not being hit? Why am I having like bugs? Why am I having late night, emergency things come up? One of the biggest problems is your infrastructure is not consistent across your environments. And if you don't write it as code, then it's just whatever people clicked on, whatever they remember to do. And so being able to do this is a huge difference for that. And the biggest thing that I would point out for this is, actually, I'll throw it to David for this. When people are trying to roll this out themselves, right? When they're starting from scratch, why is that hard? And why is that different the way that you approach it?
It's hard because you have to remember every little detail of your existing infrastructure. So for example, let's say you want to replicate prod. And you want to do it manually, then that means you have to use prod as a reference. So you go into AWS console, go through each service and figure out each little option that you've ticked, or little just little details that you'll probably miss. And I have missed that a few times before I got introduced to infrastructure as code. So I understand the frustration of replicating things manually, but with Terraform or infrastructure as code in general, it's just everything is coded. Everything is done properly. And if you want to bring something up, if you want something new on the left side, you could just pick and choose which one and then just deploy it. And it's fast, easy, reliable. It's great.
And last one, I'll just ask on this. So you've built out a lot of these modules already, right? So you kind of have a library that you can start with. How does that really change things when you're going into, everyone's trying to get stuff going really quickly. How does that change things for you guys when you have a whole library to start with versus, if you didn't have this, what would they be trying to do themselves?
Yeah, it's having a library like this saves a lot of time. If we're going to build a new infrastructure and we don't have this library, it will probably take us a while because we have to code this manually and then push it up from there, right? But this we could just pick and choose, and it's done.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we like to do here is everyone likes to try and do Terraform. What we find a lot of times is it gets kind of done half done, at which point it's not really done at all there, and then it doesn't really work properly. And if you don't have these to start with, you typically don't have the time to do it properly, and you're like, oh, I'll fix it later, which we know tends to never really happen. It becomes an infinite tech debt job. So the nice part here is David and the team have these already built out. They start with this from scratch. And I think that's a huge advantage that you wouldn't typically see. Why start from scratch when you can have the answers right in front of you? Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the environments that we have. We've talked about the infrastructures that's rolled out. Let's talk about tell us about the CI/CD pipelines.
Yeah, for CI/CD pipelines, our job is to come in and make it easy for developers to push their code out into the environments. Uh, with that being said, we also add in key elements into the pipeline. So, for example, when a developer pushes up their code, we make sure we build and test that, and make sure that packages are up and secure. And but we also add great benefits into that as well. I know there's a lot of applications that require DB migrate, and a lot of developers will have to manually go into the servers or the database and run DB migrate. We can actually integrate that into the pipeline as well. We can add in Slack notifications if things fail, and a lot of great things. After that, we deploy the application once everything's working, and if everything's good, then it'll just automatically promote into the next environment. So we'll have that great workflow from checking into the source code up to infrastructure.
Okay. And so when you have this running smoothly, is it, do you have to go in? Is there a bunch of manual steps, or are these more of a one-click deploy, one-click promote sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. For prod, you definitely need to manually promote, but it depends on your CI/CD platform. But this is all automated, and that's the big advantage point, is that everything's automated. Everything is if you need to add any new features in there, definitely, or improvements, it's an ongoing process, but it's a good ongoing process. Well, for example, there's a client that we managed to reduce their deployment time by 40%, and that kicked up their deployment time, or kicked up their
Dev
test.
velocity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things that we find here is, the key point David mentioned is being able to build this so it's fully automated. If every time you're building and promoting between environments, if you're doing manual steps, which means someone has to remember, they have to go in and do it themselves, they get distracted from their tasks. These are the sort of things that we find really kill your dev velocity. When you're like, why can't I hit my roadmap? These are big things. When you know that your infrastructure works, when you know that whenever I click to deploy, that's it. It just goes. I can focus on tasks. I'm never troubleshooting the CI/CD. That's a huge advantage for the dev team. You're really setting them up for success. Okay, so I'll cover just really quickly here. So we talked about this more in our last webinar. So I just want to show how this fits in. When you look at security, so the context of this is, I'm going to talk a little bit more on security from a program. So when you're doing, when you're in B2B and you're selling into like banks and insurance companies and those things, and you get all these security questionnaires, half of the stuff that you're talking about on that is going to be process and procedures. Half of it's going to be your platform. And most of the pieces that come from the platform side are based on your infrastructure. So there's a lot of things that, that David has talked about here that have been built in. So your business continuity, disaster recovery. Well, if everything's infrastructure as code, you click a button, I'm simplifying, but you click a button, you can redeploy everything. If everything's set up in high availability, HEA, then if anything fails, it recovers. If a region fails, if an AZ fails, availability zone, it goes over to another data center. You've got encryption that's built in. The keys are managed. They're not sitting on someone's computer. You don't have to worry about access. Like that's what the key KMS and other key management services do. That's what the secret managers do. Everything's encrypted end to end. Your databases are encrypted. Your backups are encrypted. So the key point of all of this is one of the perks of if you roll this out right and you roll this out in a structured way from an infrastructure side, you're kind of halfway done on your security program that you would need to run in parallel to this. So just kind of like showing how the two of those fit together. If this is done sloppy and you want to pass security, it's not going to happen. And David, maybe I'll just throw it quickly to you. Is there one or two of these that on the more, on the rollout and the technical side that stand out to you that you like rolling out for these?
Yeah. You'll notice that, in access control, threat management, software development, lifecycle application, we enroll everything that you see there into the infrastructure as code. So everything's all built into it. And you don't have to worry about, oh, am I missing guard duty? Is that up? So that's another big plus for infrastructure as code, that whatever you see here is what we've built into our template. There might be some stuff like, for example, guard duty. If you don't have a front end, then you probably don't need that, but that's fine. We'll just remove that, right? So that's the beauty of that. But yeah, a lot of things here that we've included, you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway from that is a lot of these are, considered nice to haves. We'll do it later on. We'll put in the roadmap. From the way David's talking about these, what it's done is like these are rolled out right from the beginning. If you have the templates, it's easy to make sure that they're there. One piece I'll just touch on really quickly for this is providing updates and visibility into this, specifically from the DevOps side. So one piece that we like to do for this, you'll see there's a couple of these are a couple like real examples that we would use. The first one you see at the top is a breakdown of here's the different areas that are being built out. Here's where they're at dev, QA, and prod, and a little bit of a snippet on it. The idea for these is they're one pagers. They're meant to be human readable. If you're technical, they're accurate. If you're not, they still make sense. So we find these are really helpful for giving visibility for managers, both inside and outside of technology. So even if you need to, if you're on the technical side and you need to pitch this to the leadership team, hey, why should we do this? How do we know where they're at? We find they really like having this visibility. And a piece that's been really interesting actually is we find, this was kind of a surprise too, a lot of our founder CEOs, they send these updates to their investors. And so we asked them, why do you do that? And their feedback has been, when I send them these, they never ask me about technology again. That it seems like I have a good plan. They trust where I'm at, and we've got many other things to focus on, but it gives them confidence and it makes me look professional. And so we like that aspect of it, of not just doing the technical piece, but how do you show the rest of the team and your investors and instill that confidence? And so the other ones that you'll see in there, we do monthly updates. So that's the middle one. So we kind of group it into different areas. And you can, here's 6 different areas that we tend to focus on. You can see what work was done in it. What's the summary of last sprint and this sprint? What are we focusing on? So it's more thematic. And then we'll do a roadmap as well too. So you can kind of see quarterly, okay, what did we really do? If someone said hey, we paid money for DevOps, what did you guys get done last quarter? It's nice for the dev team to be able to go back and communicate that in such a way to the rest of the org. Well, actually, we got this done. And actually, we rolled this out. And now we've got that stability that you were looking for your customers. And next quarter, we're going to focus on data and analytics so we can really build the stuff out that you want from, maybe it's for AI, maybe it's for some new product features. And here's a couple of top hitters of the 3 big things that happen. So I just like sharing this is, if you're technical, you probably don't care about these as much, but what's actually interesting is for the people that are not, they like being able to have that translated in a language they can understand. Okay. So as we're getting to the end of it here, I wanted to ask, so David, you've done a whole bunch of these rollouts before. For some of your earlier stage customers, do you have example, what was the fastest you've gone from just dropping in there and getting a new platform launch, a whole new infrastructure and platform launched for them?
Yeah, our fastest AWS launch so far is 6 weeks. It was a client that had an environment already, but just like the previous slides, it's we just went in with our template, and because infrastructure as code, we just went in and just laid that foundation there in 6 weeks.
And I think in this one, what they really wanted to do is they were trying to launch both as not just the infrastructure, but they needed that so they could launch their platform to host some major events on it, have a lot of traffic. So it wasn't just a technical launch. This was they were timing their platform launch with the infrastructure as well. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Cool. So the cool takeaway from this is if you need to get something going really quick, being able to have these templates from the beginning allow you to get to market really fast rather than say, we'll fix this later. It's kind of I look at it like building a house. If you build on a weak foundation, you're always going to have problems with it later on. If you've got a way to do it right from the beginning, then that gives you a lot of advantages. Okay, so what other story we could tell a little bit about? Maybe you can dive into some of the details. So Some of these we're jumping into, let's say, like a startup that's later stage, right? So like a Series A, Series B, they've got more infrastructure rolled out, so we can't just start from scratch for it. So you got to build out the new ones. You're gonna have to migrate some things over. Have you been through any where you've had it was nice to set it up, but it's a challenging migration to get it over there?
Yeah. To add some detail into that as well. It was a customer that everything was all over the place. So their dev and QA, and even prod as well. Everything was was everywhere. So what we did was we used our templates, rolled out exactly what they had, but properly. So in the dev, QA, even prod, on separate accounts, rolled out their applications, and everything was going smooth. So the biggest migration challenge was migrating the database from their old account to their new. And I want to give a big shout out to Andrew Den Hertog, one of our engineers. He what we did was we did a series of tests before the big migration, and he was able to find out what we had to do. So we created a MOP, which is a method of procedure, and we just follow that precisely. So we go from taking a snapshot, or by the way, the client, the uptime had to be 99.99%, and we had a very short window to do this, and we did this at night when traffic was very low. So what we did was we just simply just turn off the applications from the old account, take a snapshot of the old database, move that over to the new account, and then flip some DNS switches, and then there we go. Everything worked great. It was funny because they were actually surprised that it was that easy, and they were impressed. So that was the most challenging part, and everything was great.
Oh, how much data were we talking for this sort of thing as well, too? Like, is this a small database or a large one?
I think it was about 3 terabytes in size. And we also had to make sure that the data inside that was perfect. So we one of the client's engineers went in and just got into the database, the new database, and was able to verify that the data was great. So yeah, thank you AWS for that snapshot option.
I think what are the pieces that's just interesting to just add a little bit of quick color for this is when you're dealing with larger data to move over and you don't want downtime, everything becomes more difficult. So just being able to take a backup can take hours just to do it. Then you need to be able to copy it across accounts. And then it matters where those accounts are because that's encrypted data. So can you even share the key across? Was the database set up in the proper way so that that key is shareable, or are you already screwed from that standpoint? You almost have to start over and do a pre-migration for it. There's other options like DMS for data management service, but can it keep up? Does it move it quickly across? So there's actually a whole bunch that goes into these little nuances behind the scenes that, being able to find the simplest solution, there's a lot of complexity behind that on all these little nuances that can suddenly get in the way at the last minute. And if you want that, like in the example for this one, this is a logistics company that, trucking companies rely on. Whenever their trucks come in, they're going to go, it's similar to bidding that you would see for online ads. So they would send them in, they would bid on them, and someone else is going to go and deliver the shipment for it. So if that goes down, you're having major downstream impact to major customers of big, Fortune 500 companies that you know about. So sometimes I like to add this color sometimes because some of the tech pieces here, when it goes wrong, they have major impact, not just to you, but like to your customers and customers that this impacts their business in a meaningful way. So that's why some of these, knowing that you're doing it right, knowing that it's going to work. And, just even as a CTO, being able to go back to your, CEO and say, this is the day this is going to happen. It's going to work. I know how long it's going to take. I've got a fallback plan, but I can do this with confidence, and we've tested it and we feel pretty good this is going to work properly.
The biggest benefit as well is that once we built that new infrastructure, we've cleaned up all the things that were left over from the previous accounts. So since everything's infrastructure as code, they were able to see what they're supposed to have. And I know there's some companies with engineers where they will build something and just leave it there, and that will just costs will start building up. So we were able to eliminate and save, or we were able to eliminate all the unnecessary services that were deployed, but also save money for the company. So that was a big one.
Cool. And just to wrap it up here, so like kind of theme for this is like we would like to understand, like, okay, for the devs, like what's exciting for them? Like, why is this fun for you? Why are you passionate about these areas? You know, why have you invested so much into it? So I think maybe just two questions for this. Like, David, one I would just ask you is, you know, like you said, you've been doing this for 20 years. What is there something unique or particularly enjoyable about the way that we do things here, that you run things with your team, that you think is kind of unique or special that you particularly enjoy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I enjoy the most is get to play with new tech and the unique challenges that each client presents to us, and the way that we was able to meet those challenges and go from there, right? So for example, if there's a client that we have never interacted with that had certain services that we have never used, we'll do a research on it, and then we'll build a Terraform module for it, and then we can use that for that client, and then for any other future clients that require that service, right? So having that continuing building that library and also working with new tech, it is the best experience. Yeah.
And last one I'll ask you is you're working with the startups here, right? So they've got their internal teams, they've got you guys. What do you find they enjoy the most about working with you? Like, what did they get out of that?
They get you build like a trust with the team. We build a camaraderie, build friendships. We're there to work with the team, get them up to where they need to be, but also be like human beings, where we're meeting great people, we're building great friendships, and yeah, that's what we like, and that's what they like as well.
I would say that is the fun part for this as well too, is I find a lot of times a lot of groups are just doing short-term projects. We like to be in there for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
So it's either long-term, like you said, it's culture, it's relationships, it's being part of the team, somebody can lean on.
Yep.
So that's everything that we had for today. I think what we can do now is we can just as a quick reminder, there's a survey that you can fill out after. Here's David and myself. You can find us on LinkedIn. All these webinars and other founder stories we have, they're up on YouTube. So if you want to check them out, they're nice little 5-minute videos. So if you want to see the nice summarized version, here's all the highlights. You can check those out as well. We've got our free, if you fill out the survey, let us know if you want the free 1-month AWS or security work that we'll do together. The main goal for this is, like, we want to give you something actually tangible and hands-on for it. And outside of that, we'll kind of throw it to everyone here that's in the webinar. Is, you know, any questions or thoughts that they have they want to throw to the group here?
All right, if y'all have any questions, please put them down in the Q&A, and I will read them out loud for everyone. Looks like we have a comment from Lisa. Let's see if she follows up with anything. Oh, Lisa said she would just highly recommend meeting with ScalePoint. So yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
There's no more questions, then I will kind of wrap up the webinar here. But yeah, thanks to Steve and David for the awesome presentation. Lots of good takeaways and kind of real world applications of AWS Cloud. So thanks a lot. Thanks to ScalePoint for sponsoring the session. As I mentioned before, I will send a follow-up with a recording to this session if you want to share with any of your peers or look over the information again. And then I will also send out that survey link one more time. I placed it in the chat below, but I'll also send it in the follow-up email. But if there are no other questions or anything, I'll go ahead and call it a session. Y'all have a great day, and I look forward to seeing y'all next time. Thank you.